Now we have the man of the hour. Actually, most of you come to listen to Vikrant on book data. Actually, frankly, right, this thing we talk about data, actually Nielsen is doing more than data. If you tell the secret, right, that the data that they do can actually influence election, I think the whole room will fill with politicians already. But today we are just concentrating on books and not talking about how we can swing the election votes and stuff that if you know how to apply data, there probably does more than just book data. It's any type of data, and how does it affect all the various common trend and ministry when you know how to play the data game pretty well. So without further ado, I would actually invite Vikrant to share us. Let's welcome Vikrant.
Thank you. He always, Keith always talked about the election. I mean, just to clarify, we were doing the election poll surveys around the globe, but so much controversy involved, I think so many politics involved, so we give up that business. So we don't do any more polls in any of the market, but data speaks on its own. That is what we call it every time. And that is why the data is so important. And that's why I curated this as a session that within the publishing industry, I mean, if you look at the publishing industry per se and compare with any other industry, the kind of amount of data available, if you look at the IT industry or FMCG industry, I mean, there is always a good practices to be adopted, and there's no harm in doing that. And I think publishing industry should also embark those best practices. And if you go and start doing any Google of looking at the information, I mean, you will find so many articles, so many information available. I mean, when you start your book or you start your bookstore, you start your publishing program, you always look at some basic element of the data. Imagine if those data itself is not available, if you don't know how many population is there in the Malaysian market, you can't decide of what to publish, whom to publish, and that is what the data essence is all about. And that is what I'm going to talk to you about in today's presentation. Sorry, some technology. But what I'm going to speak about is something about us. So Nielsen is a global market research company. We just do data analytics, and that is what the core essence of us. If you Google it up, you may confuse yourself that we are FMCG driven company, and that is what I have been talking about, but it's not the case. We track and try to monitor every market, every sector in this globe. So we come with the experience of 90 years and doing the analytics in every globe. We have the offices on over 100 countries. And we track everything that is sold from consumer to retail. So it means that when it hits the retail counter and what is being consumed, we track everything so that it helps the decision maker by informed decision. And we also continuously investing on the technology. So currently it's AI or you talk about any technology, we do keep investing on those technology. It's because of our clients needs those kind of information, and those innovation is so important so that we understand that and we curate a kind of product and services for my clients. If I go to my next, normally people ask, even the author asks, even the publisher asks, who are my customer? So I need to understand my audience, and without that I can't create any book. What are the habits? Very importantly, as ma'am was saying that the test prep market is one of the phenomenon in the country. So anything in the examination, the books being read, and I'm connecting the dots with the publishing because here everybody is in the publisher or the retailer. It's so important because otherwise you can't curate your book without those information, and that is what we do in the second box. So I was talking about, so my whole presentation is divided into two pieces. One is metadata. So why metadata is so important for the author, for the publisher. And the last piece would be the research part. So what is metadata? Metadata is the data which describes the book. So until you don't have the right data attached to your book, the discoverability, which is the function of metadata, it's not there. It means I am a reader and I want to read a book. I might, as an author, as a publisher, might miss the opportunity of that book because there are other books also available. So if I want to read a book on romance, and I type the word romance and I try to search the books, if I don't know about the book, and I don't have a right metadata attached to that book, it means I lose the opportunity to reach out to my customer. Though my book is good, and I kept it very close to my chest, but I've not been able to sell that book because my metadata wasn't valuable. What is metadata? It includes your titles, subtitles, a genre, or a subject classification which describe the book. So once you have a description attached to the book, it means your discoverability is high. Reader depends on metadata, and so is supply chain. So don't just believe the metadata is only for readership, but also believes, Kenny is here from California, they all believe once you produce a metadata, then they can stock the book, they can place the book within the bookstore. Otherwise, if you walk into the bookstore and the books are piled up across the store, as a reader, you won't like it because the books are not being categorized well. So that's why we have seen in the airport store, people do not enjoy because the books are being piled. So fiction books is sitting at the children, non-fiction everywhere. So once you go, the categorization is so important and critical. And that is what is important, not for the reader, but also for the supply chain. And that is what is efficiency improves when you are right in terms of metadata. So what is good metadata is all about? It's create the informed decision. So if I'm a librarian, if I'm a retailer, if I'm a reader, it gives me information about that book so that I can make the acquisition based on those informed material. Book supply chain, again, it's very helpful because it connects the dot. It's a medium of communication between the bookseller, distributor, wholesaler, etc., etc. And largely it's on the reader. If I don't communicate well around the metadata, you miss the opportunity within the book supply chain. Increase visibility. So once you have a right metadata, your attachment to that improves your. So millions of visitor or the reader are viewing your information or the product or the book. Until you don't have the right product and you're missing the data, it means you're missing the opportunity. And lastly is helping the buying decision. I just clarify we did a white paper in the UK and US market by connecting the dot between the metadata and how it works in the function of sales. And we try to do a correlation between the metadata versus the sales. So what we saw that if the book carries the correct metadata and also the image is attached to that, the probability of that has been selling is 75% high than the book which doesn't carry the image and the right metadata. So if I go to the site of, say example, in this discussion arbitrarily saying Amazon, and I go and try to buy a book and the image is not available, I may tend to believe that book is not the right product. I might choose to decide to do something differently. Something similar is on the second point that I want to make it is if the cover image is attached to that metadata or the product, it means 51% average is higher than book which doesn't have the image attached to the metadata. If you have a right description, just title, description of title, author biography attached to that, basic 3 elements attached to that, the book is selling 72% higher than the book which doesn't carry it. Because the more content you provide to the reader, the better it would be, and the probability of selling the book is much higher. If you go to adding keywords, then it improves the sales by 28%. So if I'm a author, and I'm a publisher, I want to add some keywords so it becomes easy for me in terms of searching that book on the online platform. I will move to the product, it's BookScan, and what BookScan helps to the ecosystem or the supply chain. It helps the setting right print decision. I mean, we all understand the paper cost and the printer cost is going up. It means we have to be wise of what we are printing. Once we know and attach the data, we understand that whether we should print minimum copies or we can go with the 5,000, and when the exhaust happens, we can reprint the decision. So it all comes from that. We also get to know the understanding of the price or the real market information because it's a continuous track. We expect what is happening in the genre. I mean, somebody was talking to me and saying that, should I publish in romance, should I publish in crime, what genre should I focus? It all comes from the information because it's an informed decision rather than just a gut feel decision. It also monitors the life cycle of the product because we understand that fiction is a market where the life cycle of the book or the shelf life of the book is limited compared to the educational books, which runs for 3 years, 4 years, and the new edition comes in. So it means that we need to understand the life cycle, and we have to push your sales efforts within that life cycle. Monitoring the sales trends, and lastly is stock control. The biggest problem these days is expecting the returns from the retailer, and that is what the publisher wants to know, whether the stock still lying at the distributor or the retailer have, and they can expect the returns later on the year, or they need to reproduce the stock because stock has gone out. Just to give you an example, because you need to understand that how we do the entire work. So what we do is we go to the retail counters, whether the retail is online or a brick and mortar or an airport. We collect the information from them, and the basic parameter that we collect is ISBN number, quantity being sold, and what price the book is being sold. We collect this information, and now on the other basket, we have the metadata. We combine these two and produce a report which can be used by anyone who's want to understand the book at the market. We process everything in the UK hub, so there's an NDA being placed, etc., etc. So individual retailers' data is confidential. So if you come and ask me what is being sold by Amazon, might not be able to give it to you. But what I can give you, what market is doing, so you can make informed decisions. So how the model works in the interest of everyone who's sitting here. I mean, publishers subscribe, they pay the money for having the access to the data, while retailers access this information by quid pro quo. So they don't pay any money, it's a free of charge for the retailer. In return, they supply us their sales data, and we return back by giving them the market information. The other element that we need to understand that discoverability doesn't only come from metadata, it also comes from the authors or the bestseller charts being produced by the media. So media is another critical element in the whole supply chain, because they are the one who produce or they publish the bestseller charts. So if I am a consumer and I want to read and understand which books are selling in the market, there are medium of friends and family who describe or tell them that this book should be read, or television or TV movies are being based on that book, and largely is bookseller or the bestseller being published by the media houses. So if you go and see in UK, the bestseller or the bookseller magazine, which produce a Nielsen bestseller charts, are being read widely, and that's how the people or the reader discover the books, and that is why it is important in this whole supply chain. These are some international retailers who are supplying the data to us, and I know that I have shown the similar charts downstairs, but in the interest of the people who were not there, and because I had to rush the slides when I was there down because of the time, but if you look at this, I'm just showing a few examples on the market that we are producing out on this slide. I mean, if you compare it, and you understand the importance of what Australia is doing versus what India, and you can understand the growth. And once you understand the growth or the downsides in any of the market, we can also come back and say that why it is grown and why it is not grown from the previous year. So you can discuss among the sales team, among the team, that what we have done well against the other markets, so they can adopt the best practices among each other. It is important to understand that who reads what. When you made all the information and you put under these kind of data slide, you understand that which market reads what. So if you look at the UK, which is a huge market, though the country population might not be bigger than India population, but if you look at the reading habit, it across everything. I mean, if you look at, sorry about the color, but if you look at fiction, non-fiction, and children, it's very equally proportionately distributed in the children in the UK market. But if you go to the other markets, such as example Australia or New Zealand, it's a children-focused market, which is denoted by the black color. If you look at the India, it is very non-fiction market, and so is Brazil. So it means developing nation, people read more books on educational purpose, more book on the personal development or the author biographies or biographies, those kind of books we like in these markets. But if you go to the Western world, they read a lot of fiction and non-fiction and equally children books. Importantly, I mean, every publisher and the author, the attempt of them is to hit the bestseller chart by making the sales on the chart so that their efforts are then recognized internationally and as well as in the local market. So what we have done is we have taken the selective ISBN of the top chart and we have seen what kind of genre hits the bestseller chart. So if you look at UK, fiction always hits the bestseller charts. When you compare with the developing nations like India, again, which is the story that I have said, is non-fiction is hitting the charts. So you can imagine that anytime the election comes in India, biographies are being written by the politicians, and they are the one which is going to hit in the bestseller or charts in that market. So you can decide when you are running your publishing program or you are a bookseller, you understand that what kind of books will be hitting the bestseller because that's what readers want to read it. Yeah. So I also want to give you, what I've given you is a genre, but I also want to give you a small insight at the title level. So you can see I have written down countries, 11 countries, and I've also written down fiction, non-fiction, and children. So if you look at carefully, fiction is a market which is, commonality is there among the readership. So if you look at the book like It Ends With Us by Cooper, it means that it appears 5 times in different markets. It means fiction has this similarity. It may be read in the original language or it may be read in the translated language. So maybe in English or maybe in Malay or maybe in Hindi or whatever the language may be, but it has the commonality. So it means that once you elevate your publishing program and you are an author being elevated by the publisher, it means you are having an opportunity if you are a fiction writer selling across the globe. While non-fiction is very different because non-fiction is very specific to the country requirement, and that is why you don't see the similarity when you look at the non-fiction titles, except one of the Atomic Habit which is there in India and in South Africa. Children again is very similar. If you go to the Indian market, the international authors cover roughly about 70 to 80% of the market, like German Citizen or Jeff Kinney kind of books, appears everywhere in the chart. The local children publishing is smaller in the market. I don't know what is Malaysia, but it is very international driven. It means that opportunity of international authors selling in the children market is humongous. So what I also want to try to show you from the connecting for the dot from the previous slide is you don't just believe that the content, and I'm using purposely the content because content can be used in the form of print books, it can be audiobook, it can be a digital book, or it can be consumed by the reader in the form of TV or in the form of OTT, which is a newly trend has been evolved. So you can't stop or you can't direct that who consume the content in which format. But also at the same time, you also say that same book that is being produced by the country editor is also sells very well in the other markets. So if you look at the Italy story, the romance are being consumed and written by the Italy author, has been consumed within the Italy. But if you go to crime, 61% of the sales is being done by the Italy, but also 34% sales comes from the Spain. Something similar trend that we have seen in other markets as well. While if you look at the Chetan Bhagat or the historical Amish in the Indian market, it's purely been absorbed because the content has been designed by the author in such that it is being used within the market. Something similar that I want to say that on the author, if you look at the left hand side, it's a Japanese author. It's selling very well across the globe. If you look at the Italy, it's huge number being sold in the Italy market, though it's a Japanese author. Something similar, if you look at the third book, that's a Norwegian author, it also sells very well. It means that local author has potential to sell in the global market equally. And that is what the data proves it, that the importance of globalization or the borderless publishing at the moment. And then lastly is again Swedish author, which also selling across, even in India. The graphic novels, it's a new trend which has been talked about everywhere in the market. If you go to Arab world, if you go to the Western world, or even if you go to Southeast Asia, it is everywhere that this buzz is all about. And we have seen in our data that since 2019, the market size of graphic novels has been doubled. It is 26 million in sales that we have captured up till now.
If you look at 5 markets occupies a larger pie, highest by Italy, which is 40%. And interestingly, if you look at the UK market, the largely under the age of 25, absorbing the content from the novel by 53%. If you look at the UK comparatively, and we have done also the consumer work out there, we have also seen that 33% are being used or being informed by looking at the television and the OTT platform. When you compare that with the fiction, it is just 77%. So it means that the books are also been adopted or been informed by looking at the television. So don't assume that these are the mediums are not useful. These are also useful because they also controls or correlate with the higher sales. So we have also seen when the books are being used to create a book or create a web series, the sales of that book becomes higher, or the award being given, because the reader wants to read those books when they are in their hand. Some children authors, what I'm trying to say out here is that look at the distribution of the global sales among the author. I'm again using the word borderless. If you look at the Julia, sales of Julia in UK itself is equivalent to the distribution of J.K. Rowling books across the globe. So you can see that J.K. Rowling book, it doesn't sell only in UK, but it also sells across the globe humongously. And something similar that you see in Chepkin case as well. So it authors, and it's a publishing program which makes the author successful, borderless, and it can be absorbed in the originally English language, or it can be translated into the local languages. We talked about a lot about fiction. I also want to talk about non-fiction as well. Personality development is one of the areas that we have noticed is very common among the non-fiction, and that has been read in the print books, and the demand of that same book is also very high in the audio book and in the digital book as well, because people doesn't want to go and show the face while buying the book because of the sensitivity, and they don't want to expose themselves while buying those kind of books. So they take a subscription and listen to those books while they are driving in the car, or they're listening when they are on their own. So non-fiction is very highly driven on the self-help, personality development kind of books. So ultimately what I'm trying to say is data is the oil. You may be ignorant of the data, and you can continue publishing, you can continue selling your books without the absence of the data, and you may believe that historically I have been doing the same work, what affects me in the future, but you have seen what COVID has impacted in our lives. Something data make you informed decision and prepare you for the future. And something is also carries a very commercial value. It's because of you invest so much on your marketing program, you spend so much cost on printing, paperwork, etc., etc. Once you have the informed decisions, you can direct your cost and you making your cost-effective decisions when you know what this data is telling about. So that is what I wanted to say. Any questions? You can ask me.